record on this. Welcome everybody to part one of our Master Gardener Volunteer Coordinators Conference. I hope you're okay with doing a 1 hour Zoom as opposed to an 8 hour day Zoom. I think most of us might be. We are going to start this series with Steve Brady, 4-H educator in Warren County, who we have had before discuss diversity issues. I think the last time, Steve, you talked about implicit bias. We're going to have Steve talking about race today. Let's get started. So without further ado, Steve, I'm going to mute myself, stop the video, and turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pamela. Well, welcome everybody. I realize that ideally we'd be in person. A lot of us have been on many Zooms before, and some of us have Zoom fatigue, and being on the screen is not our ideal setting, particularly when you're talking about something such as race and such as some more topics that may be a little bit harder to do virtually. So I do appreciate you joining in today, and I apologize if you have Zoom fatigue. I do too. I think it was last Thursday I had 7 Zooms in one day. Made 6 of those 7. But I was pretty exhausted by the time. So thank goodness it's the morning time and I don't have somebody who's at their 6th Zoom. But we're going to do the best we can with this. And I say a couple of things. I realize too that it's easy to kind of slip in and out of Zooms. And at the same time, I would just ask if possible, if you can leave your videos on, that would be great. We're going to be together for an hour. It just helps with engagement, particularly as we're talking about these things. There will be a point a little bit later where we will actually go into some dialogue and we'll break you up into rooms. And so it's kind of important just to stay with the rest of the group as much as you can. But I understand times when you have to go in and out. But if you can keep your Zoom videos on, that would be great. I want to start by just introducing myself. I do work in Warren County as a 4-H educator. Have been here for almost 20 years now. I am originally from North Carolina, a real small mountain town called Sparta, and it's right on the kind of Virginia-Tennessee border up in the northwest corner. The town was extremely small, 2,000 people, just 10,000 people in the county, one red light, very white, not a very diverse group of people that I was surrounded as a kid. Didn't travel very much as a kid either. We went to the beach once a year to Myrtle Beach. That was kind of our place to go. I went to Disney World maybe once, I think when I was like 14. Other than that, we stayed pretty well in our kind of surrounding areas. So I did not grow up with this whole concepts of diversity and race relations and black and white and Hispanic and all this kind of cultural divides and all these different things. I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. So it wasn't really until after college. I did go to college at Appalachian State University, not too far away. And after college, I joined a volunteer service. And in that volunteer service, I traveled to California to work in a homeless shelter for a year. And I worked with people who were homeless for that year, kind of as a case manager. And it was really there that I lost my Southern accent. I had a pretty thick Southern accent. I mean, I said light and tot and light and night, talked like this. But I lost that because people kept asking me, where are you from? And so in my head, I just started to change that. And if I slip back into it occasionally, that when I talk about North Carolina, that's what happens. But while I was in California, I was kind of really surrounded by difference on a lot of different levels, both racially, with different cultures, different foods, and it just kind of totally opened my world to this whole other category of what the world really is. And so it was there that I started asking a little more questions and got a little more curious about what was around me, what kinds of things could I learn from things that are different than myself and backgrounds that I grew up with. So it was there I started asking questions. After that year, I decided to join the second year and worked outside of Chicago for a year, doing volunteer recruitment for the organization. And then I went to seminary in Richmond, Indiana, not too far away from here. And in seminary, most of my classmates were going to be pastors of churches, and they are now currently pastors. I took a different route, and I worked with the Human Rights Commission in Richmond, helping them to lead diversity seminars and workshops with the police and fire departments. And so that's kind of was my ministry formation for that time period. After seminary, I went to Washington, D.C., worked again as a volunteer. I was a VISTA volunteer at this point, and worked with the National Coalition for the Homeless, doing homelessness education around the country. And then it was after that point that I moved back to this area in the Midwest in Ohio and started my job in Extension. That gives you just a little bit of background of kind of where I kind of come from and into this job. I am the second of two educators here in the county, and other than the camping program, which is more of a traditional camping program, I do work with schools and different organizations to try to bring in new audiences into the 4-H world. So that's a little bit about me. My biggest hope in this session is that you become a little more comfortable in talking about and around this idea about talking about race. That's really my whole intention of what we're going to do for this hour. It's going to be a short time. It's going to fly by. I don't have a ton of slides. Contrast to I'm a poll worker on election day. Their slideshow training, if everybody's been through it, 216 slides we had to get through in 3 hours, and it was a nonstop plow through. So it's not going to be like that, I promise you. So let's get started. I've got a couple of fun things to do in the beginning. Everybody can see the screen, I hope. So I want you to try to identify what's this flower and where does it come from. So you can utilize your chat feature, and you can type into the chat. And Pamela, if you could kind of monitor that for me, if people have questions or anything. Take your guesses, 1 through 4. What's the flower's name? And then where does it come from? I'll give you about 10 to 15 seconds to do that. So place your guesses. I gotta find out where my chat is. Here we go. Put my chat bar over there. All right. So I'm going to slowly eliminate the wrong answers, okay, so we get to the right one. All right, so let's go with the first one, the flower name. It is not, let me go over here. It is not the Arunda gargantus. I just made up that word. It is not the sneezewort yarrow. It is not the Euphorbia, whatever that was. It is the Titan aurum. All right. Where is it from? It is not from Madagascar. It is not from New Guinea. It is not from Brazil, but it is Sumatra, Indonesia. It's grown on the hillsides in Indonesia, equatorial plant, high stench from what I read. That was what attracts the animals to be able to spread that. The largest flowering plant, I think, in the world. So there you go. Thought I'd just tie that in with your master gardeners that get us introduced to that. All right. The other thing I want to do is get out of the way this idea about stress. So we're going to do a visual stress test. And in this stress test, it's just a visual. I realize that we're all coming into this session from various points of view and various things that are happening outside of here, both with our personal lives, with things surrounding our nation, with our work. Those things tend to weigh on us even when we're at work, and sometimes we can't focus. So I just want to acknowledge that and just do a test to see how we're doing. So this test is showing a picture of 2 dolphins jumping out of the water and side by side. The test is that the greater similarity that you see, if you see these dolphins as identical, the less stress you have, the less your stress level. The greater difference you see, the higher your stress level. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so I'm hoping that most people see a cow and a dolphin, because if you don't, there's a whole other session that we need to talk about, so that you need to probably go to. But this really just indicates we all have different things that are coming at us from all different directions. That sometimes it does not help us focus, and sometimes Zoom is the worst because it's so easy to try to multitask and do multiple things. I get it because I do it too. So if you're doing that, it's fine. Go ahead, keep doing it. Well, don't keep doing it, but try to focus. But I understand that there's all kinds of different things weighing on your attention. So I get that. All right, so let's dive in. I hope one thing I hope this session does is going to be help you be more effective in your work as a master gardener, whether that's a coordinator, a volunteer, whatever function or role that you play in the organization. I hope that it's going to help in some way with that. I also hope that it's going to help you personally to kind of self-examine some of your own personal biases and assumptions that really kind of help or really limit your ability to connect with other people, especially with people who are different than you are. So I'm hoping that will be the case. And I hope it will give you some practice in actually talking about race, because it's something that I think that some of us try to avoid talking about. But I find that when we talk about it, you talk about something more and more and more, it becomes more comfortable and you kind of expand your knowledge about what it is. Okay? Expectations. I do see these conversations as powerful and important. So I want to make sure that gets communicated, that talking about race is very important and right alongside any other topics that would be important. I hope that we can listen to other points of view that are shared, because we all have different backgrounds, different experiences that come with this. That you engage with the content and willing to kind of share your opinions when we get to that point where we're in dialogue. That you'll show kindness and respect to each other for the different points of view that you might share. And that you be okay with being maybe uncomfortable with some of the things that might be shared, or just kind of the setting in general. That sometimes you have to move through that uncomfortability to get to comfort on the other side. So I think that's important to note as well. All right, so we just kind of warm up exercises to get us ready. If you can find the mistake in this slide, raise your hand. If you see the mistake, raise your hand. All right, so we got a few people. If you see the mistake, raise your hand. All right, now at times I'm going to ask you to unmute if you would, just to share. So Carrie, did you find the mistake? All right, so what's the mistake in that? And remember to unmute yourself when you're.
It's the word "the" is in there twice.
The word "the" is in there twice.
I had to read it about 3 or 4 times before I caught that.
Yeah, but now you can see it very clearly, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And you won't be able to unsee this. If I show you this in 10 years, you'll be able to identify the mistake right away, right? So once you've gotten that into your system, into your brain, you can now identify the mistake pretty easy. All right, so let's go through a couple more exercises. All right, what do you see in this picture? If you see kind of other than just a lake scene with 2 people kind of standing by the lake, if you see something other than that, raise your hand. So Joanne, you got something other than that? What's there? Help people see it if they can't. Or not, sorry, Joanne, Wendy. Can you unmute and tell us what that is? Oh, she was having trouble with sound. A baby. She says a baby. Yeah, there's a baby in there. Baby kind of in the womb. The head kind of up at the top left. The feet kind of at the top right. So baby in the womb. All right, good. We'll keep moving. What do you see here? Marcia, what do you see? Don't forget to unmute yourself. I know that's a crazy thing about this Zoom.
I know I'm supposed to see something other than what I see, so let me think here for a minute.
Well, first of all, what do you see? What do you see right off? A frog. Okay, very good. All right. Does anybody see anything other than a frog? No? All right. Well, I'm going to help you out a little bit.
I'm on a Zoom run. Yeah, I can.
What do you see now?
I need to know who.
Anybody see a horse?
Sure.
Horse's head?
Sure.
Horse's head with the ears, the mane. All right, so we have frog, we have horse. Now, there were a couple of you that practiced something or did something to change your perspective. Did anybody notice on the Zoom call somebody doing something different when you, and Jennifer's doing it right now, turning your head, right? Did I tell you to turn your head? Did I say turn your head to see better? No, you did that, right? You applied something, kind of what we're talking about when you're applying something to something that's different. You actually changed your perspective or how you looked at something. That's a lot of what we have to do when we're talking about something like race. In order to enter into the conversation, we've got to be willing to change up how we maybe see things or how we've kind of come to understand something if we want to shed some new light on a topic, particularly on the issue like race. So this really kind of begs the question, it's easy to miss something you're not looking for. So if we're not looking for something, or if we're not kind of anticipating something different in what we're seeing on a daily basis, we're going to miss it. And so that really begs the questions of who else or what else is moving through our day in front of us, whether it's with volunteers that we work with Master Gardeners, whether it's out in the field, whatever context you find yourselves in. If we're not looking for something, potentially we're going to miss it. So we've got to try to expand that view of what we're trying to look for, particularly as it relates to this topic about race and about difference. All right, so I want to just dive right in, and I want to make sure that we understand this concept of race. And some of you may be more familiar with this than others, but I think it's important to understand when we're talking about race, these are the kind of the common understandings of what we mean and kind of its history. So really, race is kind of a grouping of these human-based, of humans based on shared either physical or social qualities into categories that are generally kind of distinct by society. So a society kind of agrees on that these are kind of the characteristics that kind of group people into race. But what a lot of people don't tend to go back and look at is that race really is a human-invented concept that's been used to categorize people into different groups based on things like skin color, based on things like physical features. And it really started to become a lot more kind of defined in the 16th century, in the 1500s, when the Europeans were making conquests around the world and wanted to kind of classify people as less than. That's when the whole ideas around race came about, was in that time period. It wasn't really talked as much about before that time period. And it was really just to kind of impose these differences with people so that you could basically differentiate between who was the more important group of people. So the Europeans did that. And of course that came over when slavery started in our country. That whole system came over with that, which makes it a little different for this country because it's always been with us, not always in Europe. The other thing that I want to point out about race is that we have, between any given person, we have about 3 million differences based on our DNA, our genome, between any one person. But even with those differences, we, meaning the human race, are 99.9% the same. There's only that 0.001 percentage of how we differ from each other. And if you look at even the closest mammal, which is the chimpanzee, they also 99% the same. Now this has been researched and looked at. This was a genome project that they spent lots and lots of money for, just dissecting the genome, the DNA, and this is what they came out with. So if you need a scientific reason for kind of how we're not divided as a group, that these physical features make up such a tiny percentage of how we're different, here it is. All right. So why should talking about race be important? Why is it important that we dive into this topic, or why is it important for us? And I've kind of come up with when I do my research, came up with 6 different things of why I think it's important. That we're thinking about race whether we're talking about it or not. We're surrounded by news media, by people in our own circles talking about it, and we're sometimes kind of in our head thinking about race, whether we actually are voicing it or not. So why not get some of those things out in the open and talk about it to where it becomes more comfortable? It does, I think, in talking about it, it helps us be more comfortable and less anxious about what we say, because I know a lot of people sometimes fear what I say is going to be misconstrued. I'm going to be labeled as racist. I'm going to be labeled as this, as that, and then my reputation or the people how we're going to view me is going to be different. Well, in talking about it, and especially in different circles that have some dialogue built in and not judgment, you start to reduce some of that anxiety and knowing that it's okay to make mistakes in talking about this because nobody's perfect in this discussion. It's also important to learn how race has shaped our understanding and how it's shaped the understanding of many of the people that we come in contact with or people in our communities, and how they have experienced life different than we are based on the race of them and their families. It also helps us connect with people's other shared lived experience, and helps us understand of why African American men that I know of who are professors are scared to go out and walk at night. And you start to kind of hear some of these stories that make you rethink, wow, how can I do that? And this other group or this other person cannot do that in the same way. So it has you kind of gain some empathy of some different struggles of people who have that on sometimes a daily basis. And it also helps us to understand some of these negative effects, how this cumulative effect impacts people. And you can only really do that by dialogue and by hearing stories and people sharing kind of their truths with you. All right, so we're going to quickly go through this because I think it's important to know the distinction between these, and then we're going to dive right into a conversation. All right, so the differences between debate, discussion, and dialogue. So debate, which a lot of people are kind of familiar with, and this is how we operate a lot of times in our life, the debate is more about, I want to try to convince people that I'm right. I'm the one that's right. It often is a way we typically go into conversations or how to communicate. We tend to try to persuade people to think like us. We tend to try to persuade people that my way of thinking, my way of doing things is really the right way to do it. When we kind of go way down into it, you're seeking to persuade people to kind of your way of thinking and kind of in hopes to win people over. And ultimately, you kind of hope in the one that you're going to be right. So that's generally what debate is. And there are times when that's a very good application of what we're supposed to be doing. But talking about race is not necessarily the time to do that. Then we have discussion. Discussion is more about the noisier one, the noisier one, the one that speaks the loudest and the one that kind of has the floor is the smartest one or the one kind of disseminating the right information. You kind of have a checklist, you have an agenda to check off. You assume that everybody there is kind of on the same playing field, everybody has the same experience or similar experiences, and your goal is to kind of cement in your points, all right? And you have a goal of kind of clarifying and understanding, but not necessarily hearing what everybody else is saying. And then you have dialogue, and dialogue is really, if you think about it, it's a way to connect with whatever group that you're talking with. And if you're a Master Gardener coordinator or you're a volunteer and you're thinking about your community of volunteers, you're looking at dialogue as a way to connect your group, that you're working together to try to understand something beyond yourself. And so you seek to understand other perspectives, you reflect on your own, but you know it's just your own, and you also value the opinions and the reflections of others. So if you're in a group of volunteers or people that you're working with, and you have a variety of different backgrounds, whether you're black, white, you're taking that as your kind of your common understanding of what it is that you're doing in the project, and you're kind of going toward how can we work and do this better together. So that's kind of the difference between dialogue. All right. Okay, so we are going to dive right in. And I know we realize it's already 25 after, so it goes by pretty quick. So I think that, as a 4-H educator, learn by doing is the best way to do it. So that's what we're going to do. So we are going to dive in. And I want to make sure that you see the questions first before we go into I'm going to show you 2 short videos. One's 60 seconds, and I think one is 1 minute and 30 seconds, so they're very short. But there are going to be 2 of them. And you can, and in your group, I'm going to split you up into different rooms. In your rooms, you're going to have these 3 questions at least to guide you. All right. So this, when you get into your room, you're going to need to identify somebody to go first. And the way I'm going to do that today, instead of everybody just kind of looking at each other and not knowing, the person with the shortest hair, you're going first. All right. So you're going to be reflecting first. Now you can pass. You can say, no, don't want to talk. Have nothing to share. That's fine. And then you're going to point to somebody else to go next. Okay, they can do the same thing, or they can share something that they saw in the videos that kind of impacted them based on these questions. All right. We also need somebody who is going to be the timekeeper, so somebody who's going to keep the time. That person is the birthday closest to today. You're the timekeeper. All right. And so that's the person closest to today, the birthday. That's your timekeeper. You're going to keep people kind of on time. Hey, we've got 5 minutes left. Person's talking too long. Hey, let's give somebody else a chance to talk. So we get everybody kind of in the discussion, the dialogue. And the third person is the reporter, somebody who is going to be, when we come back as a larger group, just going to share a couple of things that happen in your group, maybe a couple of key points, something that you kind of gleaned from the conversation that you thought was important to share for the whole group. All right. And that person is the person with the longest hair, is going to be that reporter. Okay. That person. So we've got a timekeeper, birthday closest to today. We have a person who's going to start in the discussion. That's the person with the shortest hair. And the person who's the reporter, person with the longest hair. Okay. You're reporting out to the larger group. You're going to have to determine those hair size, length and all that kind of stuff. I don't want you taking out your hair and that kind of stuff to measure. We're not going to get that specific. Okay. All right. So any questions about any of that? Okay. All right. So, and Pam's going to be dividing this. What do we have, Pam? We have 5, 10, 15, 20,
23.
23. We're going to go into 6 rooms.
Okay.
And
And one thing,
groups, okay?
one thing I want to remind everybody,
Go ahead.
because I experienced this the other night, when I divide you in a room, you're going to get a little blurb that says join room. If you don't click on join, you're going to be in an unassigned participant. And if you're the only one, you may be the only one talking there. And I can't get back into that to get you to go to another room. So be sure you hit
So you
join
got to click on
room.
that.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Okay. All right. So we're going to, before you do that, Pam, before we do that,
Okay.
no, we're going to watch
right,
the videos
right.
first. And then,
Gotcha.
we're going to split into rooms. Yeah. Then that'd be something if I didn't show you the videos and had you talk about the non-scene videos. That'd be interesting discussion.
All right.
All right. So here we go. Make sure everybody can see and hear this.
Steve, people are asking if there's sound.
Oh, there's no sound?
Right. We're not hearing sound.
You're not hearing any sound?
No,
Oh,
so
goodness.
when you share your screen, if you stop sharing, go back and share and optimize for video. Yeah.
So me stop sharing? All right, let me go back here. Sorry.
Yeah, and then when you start sharing at the bottom, when it says, brings up the share screen, at the very bottom, it says optimize for video.
So let's see.
So hit share
So
screen.
share screen.
When that box comes up at the very bottom.
Optimize screen sharing. Gotcha.
There you go.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. Is that better?
In Brown versus Board of Education, the famous case that desegregated schools in the 1950s, Dr. Kenneth Clark conducted a doll test with black children. He asked them to choose between a black doll and a white doll. In most instances, the majority of the children preferred the white doll. I decided to reconduct this test as Dr. Clark did to see how we've progressed since then. Can you show me the doll that you like best or that you'd like to play with?
This one. I like that one.
I'm kidding.
This one.
That one?
This one. I like to play with this.
And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll?
He's white.
And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you and why does that look bad?
Because it's black.
And why do you think that's a nice doll?
Because she's white.
And can you give me the doll that looks like you? 15 out of the 21 children preferred the white doll.
All right. Let's see. Stop sharing. All right. I'm going to share another. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Can you hear this?
Are you sharing a video? We don't hear or see anything, Steve.
Okay, don't see anything. Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I need to share my screen with this as well. You'd think I would know all this stuff by now. All right, here we go.
I knew this question was coming, and I waited until someone asked it nicely to respond. So no, there's no such thing as white pride, in part because there is no white culture. You can have pride based on your ethnicity, like Scottish, German, Irish. You can even have regional pride, like Southern pride. These things usually apply to your cultural identity, like how you grew up, etc. And I had some people argue, well, other colors have pride, and no, they don't. Chicano, Latino pride, Asian pride, those are not colors. The one exception is black pride, and that's because they've had a unique experience no one else has. Black Americans were robbed of their culture. They don't know where they come from. Two black Americans meet. They could have come from warring African tribes. They don't know. What they do know is their American experience was similar. In other words, the thing that connects them is the color of their skin and how society has treated them as a result. You also have to consider where the terms white pride and black pride originate. White pride was coined by white supremacists. Black pride is from the Black Power and Civil Rights movement. So one represents superiority and hate, and the other a fight for equality.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you a chance to then break into rooms. There are your two videos to reflect upon. So Pamela, if we can go into, how many did I say? Five rooms, 6 rooms?
6. And there are a couple
go into
that
6 rooms. Remember your couple that joined?
no, there are a
Okay,
couple
well, you
that
can bring them
don't
along
have.
if they.
Well, there's a couple that don't have videos, and there's a couple that don't have microphones. So remember to watch your chat box for, I think, Wendy and anybody else who doesn't have a microphone to
Gotcha.
make sure they're involved.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So just remember the questions, and yeah, remember those questions. Okay, we'll go ahead and divide up, and we'll do this in 10 minutes.
All right, here we go.
Can we put your questions in chat? Yes.
Can you put the questions back up on the screen?
Yes, let me do that real quick. So there are the questions. For some reason I lost everybody. All right. So now you should see her to be able to break out into rooms. I'm going to keep it.
Well, how did you and I get in the same room, Steve?
Well, I haven't joined yet, so
Okay.
I haven't joined the other room, my
Gotcha.
room yet.
All right.
So, are we the only ones here? For some reason, I lost my like the video part, like to be able to see people. How did that happen? Participants.
Okay, so Marilyn McKinley's here. Marilyn, can you join a room?
Let's set a timer. So what is our time? Gosh, it's already 30
Marilyn,
after.
can
It's
you
crazy how
join a
fast an hour
room?
goes. There we go.
Marilyn McKinley.
She may have stepped away. Who knows?
All right, I'm going to
Sometimes
put
that
her
happens.
in room.
Put her in room 1 because that's where I was going to be, and I'll just stay here.
Oops, sorry, put her in room 6. I'll move her to room
That's okay.
1.
That's
she
fine.
still has to hit join. All right.
Yeah, and she may have, sometimes if you step away, you don't do that, but.
Okay, all right, Steve.
Okay. Very good. I'll go and join room 1. And I've got basically a minute's gone by. I would say at 45, can you give like a 1-minute warning?
Okay, I can.
Or have people come back? And yeah, if you tell people to come back, I think it gives you 60 seconds.
Yep, it does. So 10:45. All right.
Okay. Yep.
I can
Sounds
also send them a message to all saying 5 minutes. Marilyn McKinley, are you there?
while, but you know, you wonder what kind of.
Okay.
Okay, so there's somebody with longer hair that just jumped on here, so.
I am going to all the rooms.
Okay.
So you're not really here.
I'm not here. I'm just observing.
Okay.
Okay, so back to let's say relating to the children. I said, I was really the thing that interesting to me is what kind of messages they're receiving. Is it at home or is it society or where they're getting their messages where they're selecting that one doll over the other, the white doll. And that's just really intriguing to me that, you know, so many of them, you know, I could see if it was a good 50-50 or something like that, but when it was such a majority of them selecting that doll, you just wonder where they're getting their messages from. Is it society or is it home?
One thing that struck me was how they use the word bad doll and not different doll.
Mm-hmm.
So that sent a really powerful message because they all grabbed the black doll. That almost made me tear up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is from personal experience because my county is very racially diverse. And to me, it comes from both the schools and the environment, but it also is part of their culture that they have had that ingrained into them for a long time, their parents. Because you see that coming when you're working with some of their parents.
Oh my God. That's really a sad thing. Okay, anything else?
All right, so I wondered if there was any kind of a gender thing going on too.
Well, I think part of that too is the question that was asked.
What is it? Which one is bad?
Yeah. That's
maybe
when I noticed more of the kids picking the black doll. But I mean, did anybody learn anything new?
No.
I didn't.
No, just kind of reiterated what we knew.
Right. And how do you think this relates to your Master Gardener volunteers?
Well, I think just, you know, be mindful of the differences, you know, and I think we all try to do that, be mindful of the differences and respect and kind of celebrate those differences. I mean, it may not be, you know, it may not be black and white, but it may be, you know, it could be a handicap versus ambulatory. It could, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different distinctions there. And I guess that's how I would.
Different results nowadays compared to the videos that were taken several years ago.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, Mark. I'd like to see.
Video too was probably a reflection on what's going on right now in our society.
I may have missed it, but I thought it was someone saying that there had been this study and they decided to repeat it. And then maybe if they repeated it, that it was more recent. So I may not have understood the context, but that's what I thought was they were redoing it to see if they would get the same result.
Looking at the furniture in the schools, it looked like it was from
old.
20 or 30 years
like an
ago.
older video, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
The clothes too, yeah.
So how do we take what we're saying that's about surprise that they have this self-perception and apply that to what we're doing now we're doing with adults of different races?
I think it comes down to you have to just be aware of people's feelings. It always comes back to you don't always know where someone's coming from or what they have going on in their life. So just in general, you just want to be kind all the time. They may be having a bad day and they may not be the nicest person at that moment, but you still need to keep in mind that they may have something going on that you don't know about. You just always want to be kind.
And I don't know if all Black people think that white people are privileged. You hear that
Are you two talking?
Ing has a meeting going on next door, so she can't speak, but we've been chatting back and forth. She did offer to call me, but I didn't want her to have to get up. So can you see our chat, Pam?
No, I actually can't, which is really interesting. I still see, as the organizer, I still see everybody's chat. So as long as you guys are chatting, I mean, I just come on and you're both muted. I thought, oh, maybe they're mad at each other.
No. We were, she asked me, which I thought was an interesting question, like the two Black guys that identified with each other immediately. She asked me, as a white person, when I see other white people, do I identify with them immediately? And she said that she sometimes does when she sees another Asian person. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was an interesting question, and I told her this, I rarely, like, I live in the sticks, so I rarely see anyone in person that doesn't look like me.
Yeah, yeah.
So unfortunately.
Yeah.
Getting additional
parking. I rarely see, sorry,
near this
are we back in the side? I rarely see another Asian person, so.
Oh, there she's done.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll leave you two to chat. Go to another room.
Okay. See ya.
Bye.
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 How to you know, if what makes us a society is that we have to find a subset that we can hate and focus all of our negativity on, then we have a long way to go. We need to figure out how we can celebrate all of our achievements and positives and meet each other as humans first, and then discover the vast spectrum that we each are. And I honestly don't, I don't have solutions. I just know that I notice it more and more. And I know I've noticed very recently, I would say in this last year, there's an increasing permission to express hatred for groups that aren't of the perceived norm or majority. And then if we look within our organization, I don't know about
that was the third question. How do these things apply to our work as a Master Gardener?
Oh, well, look at that. We stumbled right into it. My perception, and I've been in
to expand that even with the groups that you have. All right, so we've got an option to leave the breakout room, so I'm going to leave that and join the big room. But thank you. Most of us, I believe, are back. I believe. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again and get these questions back up here. Okay, so I don't know who was the reporter for your groups, but I'm just going to call on somebody, and if you weren't the reporter, the person in that group, go ahead and start chatting. I'm not sure we even picked one. And maybe this may be easier to do as a round table, but Carrie, were you the reporter, or who in your group was the reporter, or did you pick one?
No, I wasn't. Jennifer Goldschneider was.
Okay, Jennifer, any thoughts or reflections on kind of your discussion?
So yeah, so I made a few notes. Thoughts and emotions from the video, primarily for video one with the Black children, was surprise, curiosity. We'd really like to know if the study were done with white children, how the white children would react. New information, we felt like that surprise translated into new information that Black children would be making that choice. how does that relate to work within or with our MGVs? It was interesting. I happened to be talking with 2 other members in my room who don't have people of color in their MGV programs. And don't serve people of color either. And I'm in Hamilton County and we have both. So it was great to share back and forth how that worked, how different that was. And Carrie taught me something fascinating about being able to take SNAP benefits, food aid benefits, and use them to purchase plants and seeds. So that information is going back to my county as well.
Good. That's great. Thanks, Jennifer. That's great. Let's see. Mark, were you in that same group or were you in a different group? You were in the same group?
Yeah, that was my group.
Okay. Let's see. Richmond, what about you? Were you the reporter or was somebody else in there? Take your mute off there, Richmond. I know. It gets you every time.
It does. I was the kind of the discussion leader. I think Wendy was our reporter.
No, Wendy doesn't have the mic.
Oh,
Carolyn,
right, yeah. Carolyn. Okay, Carolyn.
We had the same thing, surprised to the point of being almost being shocked, and also saddened by what was happening, and also troubling because these kids were very young, and they already are picturing themselves. They put themselves into a box that we didn't think was a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Carolyn. All right, Deb, what about you? Were you in that same group or were you in a different group?
Different group.
Okay.
And we felt the same way. We were very saddened by that first one. We were a little confused with, you know, why the kids would be that way. How much was environmental and how much was home taught type thing. We didn't really learn much. I mean, that one we did learn a little bit of what we didn't know, but the second video we did not. We pretty much thought that was norm. And how does it relate to our program? Just that we have to be aware of how you know, folks feel when we go into neighborhoods, whether or not we swoop in like the, you know, savior on the white horse, or whether or not we actually work with people and help them and they do it rather than we doing it.
Good point. Good point. Thanks, Deb. Thomas, do you want to report from our group?
So that was actually, I'll let Joanne, she was taking notes.
Yeah,
sorry.
She had longer hair.
Thomas doesn't have the longest hair.
That's true.
That's
good point.
Sounds not very.
Joanne, do you want to give a little report? Sorry, I totally blanked on my own instructions.
We found it very sad. It was new information to us. We were a little curious about what if the study had been done in today's time, what we would learn if it was still the same, because it did seem a little outdated. And I think that we do need to be very conscious of what is going on in our times today when we try to relate with that type of race problems.
Good point. Thanks, Joanne. Rachel, were you in a different group or? Okay, great.
Okay. It was just Ing and I in our group. And one thing that I thought was interesting, as soon as you started the second video and I saw that guy, I immediately thought that he was going to be a white supremacist, which is interesting because I don't really care what people look like. And he was kind of scruffy like my own husband is. So I hope that I don't, maybe I just was expecting that and I didn't judge that guy because he turned out to be the opposite. But Ing and I also talked about, we were talking about the two Black gentlemen that identified with each other immediately because of their race. And she asked me if, when I see other white people, do I immediately identify with them? And I don't. But I also, you know, shared with her that I rarely see anyone that isn't my own race, because I live out here in the sticks. So, yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. All right, others, I don't know what groups I'm missing here, so you're going to have to step out and let me know. What other groups? Missy, were you in a different group?
I'm from group number 2.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Again, we share very common facts with the other groups as well, but very surprising with the children's reactions. And our big question was, where are they getting this information? Is it from home, from school, from society? What disturbed us a little when they asked them to pick the bad doll versus the different doll as well. And the results really surprised us on that one. And we also said, would the outcome be different if it was done today? And would it be different if it was done regionally? Okay, north, south, east, west. As far as the black and the white, what came through to us was that the white culture doesn't really exist as strongly as the black culture did, because that seems to be what's emphasized. And again, could this culture be defined by region as well? We also referred to some of the forms we have to fill out when they're asking for white, Caucasian, black. You know, it seems it's better now because they're asking for more, like Native American cultures and things like that. So maybe a little bit of progress, but we were all very saddened by that first one.
Well, thanks for sharing. Other groups that haven't shared yet, or does that cover everybody? All right. Well, we're already at 10:55, which is kind of crazy. So I'm going to just jump back over here to my slide. Am my slideshow on? Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to keep us, focused on, we're talking about race. And again, like I was sharing in my group, we are part of the Ohio State University system and extension. And our charge is to serve all citizens, no matter what classification they put themselves in, what identity, what race. So it is part of our charge to be attentive to having some of these conversations that may be difficult for us to have, and to move forward and to work with all peoples. So we, and I'm talking about myself as well, need to become more adept, more comfortable with having maybe what we consider difficult conversations to move forward our charges as citizens of Ohio. So these are some of the things that I put in there that have come from other people that I think are kind of important. I think I picked out 4. The first one is just really to be genuine. Don't act like you have all the information, that you know everything, that you're the end all for all knowledge. Be genuine in terms of your answer, in terms of your questions, and how you're interacting with other people. If you don't know, you don't know. Don't pretend that you do. And admit the mistakes. In talking about anything serious or any kind of topic, particularly around race, you don't have that lived experience. I don't know what it's like to grow up as a black man in this culture, what it's like on a daily basis, much less in situations where I may be encountering with the police or whatever. So I'm not going to pretend that I understand that, and admit mistakes when I make the wrong assumptions toward other people, especially who are different than I am. And listening to understand, not listening for how am I right, how does this fit into my narrative, but how do I need to listen to understand how another person is living in this society. And then do your own research. The internet is filled, obviously, with all kinds of stuff. Some of it's crap and some of it's all kinds of other things. But, do your own research about what is race, what is racism, how black culture, why do people have black pride? What's dive into some of those things yourself, particularly if you're working with audiences of that race in particular. That will help better inform you and be a better educator and a better master gardener in whatever setting you find yourselves in. People kind of know this. I think this has been going around quite a long time, but if you kind of see people as icebergs in a lot of ways, that the majority of the iceberg is underneath that waterline, and that our job as educators is to get to know people below that waterline and not just see their physical outward characteristics as being the most important, but that we just don't classify that person on their 10%, just like Rachel was talking about with how that person looked. We're seeing that person for underneath, and the only way we can get to that underneath is to get to know people and to have honest dialogue and be genuine. that will drop that waterline for both you and the people that you're trying to communicate with to better kind of work forward and kind of accomplish your mission in the organization and as people. So there's the 10%. You can't see this on the side, but what's really important is what's underneath. That's what we hoped people will see, is not just our outward appearance. We hope they'll see what's inside. So why don't we afford that to other people as well? So instead of just assuming. When we do see our own personal bias and prejudice, and this can come out sometimes strongly and sometimes kind of hiddenly or subtly, be self-critical. Be willing to look at yourself and say, why am I feeling such a strong feeling when I see this, or when I see this group of people act in this way? What's informing that for me? What past things are informing that? What societal things are informing that? And is it really accurate? And start diving in. And if you see that behavior come out, start to look at how can I change that to really become, more of that dialogue with, as opposed to controversy to. And then once you understand that, be willing to share your experiences with other people, whether it's in your own cohort or your own families, your own groups, but making sure you're kind of being able to expand that circle as well and be honest about your biases, because everybody has them. So this is one of my last slides. I want to make sure that people know that you're one person, but your impact goes way beyond what you think you have. And whether you're a volunteer, whether you're working alongside somebody one-on-one, out from the public view, you have a huge impact. It can have a huge impact on another life. And so you may be Batman to some people. I don't know. And you may think of yourself as only a dog. But be encouraged that your impacts go a lot further than what you may think. All right? And the last one is just be curious. Sometimes that helps drive being interested in wanting to care about other people's plights. Be curious about it first. You don't have to dive in like this is your only topic and only issue that you're worried about and you're concerned about in our world, but at least be curious about maybe what other information is there that I need to glean to better help me do my work, or be a better person or a better citizen. So I appreciate it. We're at 11 o'clock. Jump in. That's the only thing I can say. When you have opportunities to involve yourself with dialogue, particularly around race, around prejudice, around different topics like that, dive into it. Just do it. Share your opinion. Share what you think, where you're at, and don't be afraid to step into that. This is a picture of me, by the way. I'm in Croatia, and I did not jump, so I guess I can't practice that on that slide. But don't be afraid to jump in. So, any questions for me as we kind of close up this hour session?
If there are no questions, Steve, I want to thank you very much for your time and for your expertise. Before we started, I asked Steve, about his skills and, why is he in this area of teaching diversity and racial discussions, and he said it's a passion of his, and he's going to continue that path. And so hopefully this just opens our discussions. As many of you heard, many of us are in the rural areas where we do not have people of color, so we are not experienced with that. So I think this is just the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and launch the anonymous poll. If you would fill this out, please. Again, it is anonymous. Fill this out, and this will help us inform us of our next steps here. Our next one is next Thursday, and next Thursday we will be discussing engaging your Master Gardener volunteers with the group discussions. Again, we'll be doing breakout rooms on talking about how did you engage them this year and how do you plan on engaging them next year, because it doesn't look like this is going to end anytime soon. So we hope you sign up for next week, and we will have this recording. I'm not sure where we're going to keep it or where we're going to link it. It will be a YouTube video, so I'll make sure we have that available for all of our coordinators. So I'll give you a couple more seconds on the poll, and then we will end it. Again, thank you, Steve. We do appreciate your time and your
You're welcome.
passion,
My pleasure.
passion for this. Lots of stuff we learned today. I appreciate it.
Great. Anytime. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of the conference. I know it's virtual, but do the best you can.
All right. Thanks, Steve, and thank you, everybody. That concludes then today's session. Have a great weekend and enjoy this dreary rainy day by the fireplace.
Thanks, Pamela.
Bye, everybody.